Good morning. Welcome to the Level Set. I'm Larry Fields, attorney Larry Fields, and I'm joined today by political extraordinaire, griot and all around good guy and intellect and scholar, Mike Jones,
The Mike Jones.
and the Dr. Charles Alexander, another incredible intellectual. We're going to start the conversation today as I'm getting texts from our brother that's over he is in Africa this morning, and Gerald is in Ghana, I believe. This getting text from him. He's on a hike and under the canopy in some of the mountains. So when I look down at my phone, it's from him. He wanted to be with us here today, but he didn't have internet access, on the hike. So I'm somewhat distracted. But we want to start a conversation this morning, referencing the G7 summit that many of us have witnessed. And it's a conversation that I think we need to have as it relates to the impact that those seven countries have. It's almost as if, they've decided to split the world up amongst themselves. And for those, just as a reminder, those seven countries are Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, and the United Kingdom and the United States. There's a common thread through the vast majority of those. Those are imperial powers. And those imperial powers have leveraged their weight against a number of individuals, and they've manipulated the economic system to their liking. But they get together every so often, and they try and coalesce around, or they allegedly coalesce around things like climate control and human trafficking. But at the end of the day, the status quo is maintained. So I just wanted to get some feedback from our brilliant panel on how we should approach this and what does this mean to African people in the United States and abroad.
Well, I'll start it off. I think your frame of reference is the right one, because as we were talking kind of off camera before we started, I think one of our real weaknesses, particularly at the leadership level, is how narrow our context is intellectually and historically about our experience. The world is not created the moment you come into it. You inherit the world from the past. So your present is the cumulative effect of everything that happened before you got here. And having an understanding of this larger palette, for me, is always critical to how you negotiate your present reality. And historically, in our community, with rare exceptions, we have not bothered to inform ourselves and also fold in international politics and international economics into part of the realization of our present condition. In fact, Malcolm was an outlier. Dr. King was severely criticized by civil rights leadership when he got involved in the Vietnam War, anti-Vietnam War protests, and he basically framed it being anti-imperialist, and it's kind of like you can't be for the liberation of Black people and not be for the liberation of all people. I think the Black Panther, and I'm been so long I can't remember it right, but the Black Panther, the whole slogan was Black power for Black people, power to the people, and all power to all people. kind of thing. So it was kind of like if anybody's enslaved, you can't be liberated. So and you're quite right, Larry, that what the G7 is what Western imperialism looks like in the 21st century, because this is just the 21st century iteration of something that started in the 1400s, 1500s. So Western imperialism and this neoliberal world order that we all live in is a function of the last 4 or 5 years of world history. And if you notice the countries that are not in it, like China, you know, say some places like Turkey and Iran, all of those empires are large ethnic groups that may have had been at some point subordinate to Western powers, but they never were completely colonized by them and always maintained a level of independence, and they're on the fringes of that order. They had let the Soviet Union in for a minute when they thought that Russia was compliant. And Russia has always been the outlier in Western Europe. They don't know what to do with it. They don't know if it's part of Western Europe or someplace else. So it's our lack of understanding of, I'll say, the last 1,000 years of world history that keeps us kind of compromised and confused about our day-to-day conditions here in America.
I think that is that needs to be underscored. Everything that you talked about, particularly picking up on the neoliberalism front that we have, and all of those individuals that you spoke about, you are 100% correct, and I think brilliant in pointing out the fact that those are individuals that were imperialist, or individuals, and that were, or in the case of China, subject to imperialism and buckled to comply. Dr. Alexander, what are your thoughts? I'm sorry, not China, but Japan. I'm sorry.
Japan.
Japan. Yeah, I'm not China, but Japan, because Japan is still on the fringe. And you remember, Russia was a part of it was the G8 for a minute, and
Right.
then when they invaded Crimea, they kicked them out. But I believe Russia's still on the Security Council to some extent. But yeah, it is that Russia is on that fringe. They're in Asia technically, and
Right.
Europe is they've never known what to do with them. Dr. Alexander, what are your thoughts?
Yes, um, I agree and appreciate Mike's, his laying out of the facts. We are looking at the imperialists. That's who they are. These are the same, with the exception of Japan. These are the same folks, who enacted the partitioning of Africa. So this is what they do. This is what they do. How and again, how it relates to us now, why it's pertinent to us at this moment, is that they're looking, the other G7 countries are looking crazy at the US because we got this guy in office that folks don't have, this too, part of our pre-production conversation. Folks are looking crazy at Joe Biden. And you know, and we're stuck because you got folks who, well, you can't talk. You're gonna confuse people if you say something about Joe Biden. I mean, like, we can't even have legitimate conversations about leadership because the manner in which the Democratic Party does business. The Democratic Party is not democratic. they make decisions, and I mean, really, again, this is the U.S. The U.S. is always talking about democracy, and you got them people on on the far right trying to limit people's voting rights, and then you got these people on the left who aren't, well, they're limiting voting rights too, in that they're limiting choice, right? And so you try to have a conversation about where all of this stuff is going, and you got folks that look like us saying, "Oh, well, it's Joe Biden because you don't want Trump." Meanwhile, you're not getting any bang for your buck, kind of, regardless. And so all of it is bad. The G7 is bad. All they're trying to do is, they're having their ongoing conversation about how to partition the world so that they can extract resources from people of color. That's what the G7 does. And then more specifically, the other six are concerned what goes on here, because they, although they don't want the crazy man, they're doubting that this old dude who shuffles can provide leadership in the United States, let alone globally. This is what we're looking at.
So, one of the things that we have tendency to do, even the three of us, is try to keep this stuff sometimes polite and at a level. And I'm going to take a chance and a risk in it. And if we had the infrastructure, we could hold on this and ask people to comment. And I am going to explain what you and I said already in lay terms. G7, if you think about organized crime, when it really was organized crime in the 30s, the 40s, and the 50s, the G7 is the commission, and the United States is the boss of bosses. Okay, and the reason the United States is the boss of bosses is because it's got the biggest gang, the biggest armory, and all of that. So they all gangsters, and so okay, you running this, but you got to run it in a way that makes sense for all of us, or else we have to get somebody else different. And their problem right now is they ain't got nobody else different. There is nobody that can take the place of the United States. So if they gonna stay in the organized crime business, they stuck with United States leadership, and the boss, the godfather of the United States, is too, in different ways, inept old white men, which is just bad for business.
He's
It's
like
just bad for business.
he's like the pajama dom, the don that they had
Right.
that walking around
Right.
New York in pajamas.
Right. So let's kind of even break this down a little further to your point on the Democratic Party. If I was the boss boss of the Democratic Party. And to be honest, decisions like this can't be made by 75 million people. It's always made by a handful of people in a room that are representing the interests of some more people, and they figure it out. Here's the deal I would have done in 2020 that would have eliminated this situation we got right now. And what I'm about to say is probably going to make a lot of people upset. How could you say something like that? The first thing is I nominate Joe Biden for president in 2020 because I need a seasoned veteran to take down Trump, somebody who's already made their bones and I can trust with the assignment and trust him for the next 4 years. But I'm going to tell him, but you too old to, but I ain't got no choice. So you get to be president for one term, okay? And that's what you always want to be was president. And I think you can do everything that we need done for 4 years. And to be honest, he's an excellent mechanic. He ain't a brilliant leader. He ain't no visionary cat, but he is a great mechanic. The systems like Pelosi is a great political mechanic or engineer. And then I said, we can't do this without Black folks, and particularly Black women. So I need a Black woman to be vice president, to rally everybody to show that this ain't about old white guys. She's the symbol of that. But I'm going to tell her, my sister, you can only be the vice president because we can't afford, we got too many crazy ass white folks to afford another Black president right now. Okay. Barack Obama came early. Okay. White America has not evolved to that level. They still going through the trauma. So here's the deal. You're going to be vice president, but in 2 years, we're going to make, the bride is going to resign. And you also going to be the first woman, Black woman on the Supreme Court. So you're going to make history 2 times and you're going to be taken care of for life. Besides that, your husband is a millionaire. So y'all good to go. And Gavin Newsom from California, biggest state in the country, you're in your 50s, you're telegenic, you do well, you go be the vice president. And when Biden announces he ain't running for re-election, you go become the de facto Democratic nominee, and it'll be our 55-year-old 2-term governor of California gets this batshit crazy white guy who leads all these other batshit crazy white people, and it'll be a cakewalk in 2024. That's how, if they were competent and real gangsters, that's what they would have done. And we wouldn't even be having this conversation. And them other gangsters who make up the rest of the G7 would be sleeping easier. And so this is a case of a fundamental lack of understanding what it means to have power and control and how you maintain it. And American culture at this point produces venal and corrupt office holders, but it don't produce the kind of hardcore gangster politicians that you need, because all politics is it's the game what you leave a gun at home. And if you don't have a level of ruthlessness and can see up the street or around the corner, you really got no business in this business. But literally, we're here because of fundamental breakdown. You got a country full of second-string white boys who were sitting on top of an empire and ain't got a clue about what they're doing. And then you got too many pundits on television making up shit to a fairly probably the most actively ignorant population in the advanced world who would just believe just about anything. So the place is a mess, and 2024 is a jump ball. Shouldn't be, didn't have to be. Competent men, because it ain't very few women, but competent men and women in charge of the family business would have taken care of this shit, and it wouldn't be a problem. It's like Don Corleone telling Michael what's gonna happen after I'm dead. Okay, why? Because I know what gangsters do. It ain't I'm a genius and can see you outside the grave. This is the play, because it's the only play that makes any sense. It's what I would do if I was them. And they small. They just think you weak, and I don't want you to look strong. Because if you stay looking weak, they won't ramp up to what they do, and you'll be able to clip them because they won't see you coming. And so there's a level of duplicity and I don't want to say, hey Larry, is it possible, and Charles, you're a psychologist, is it possible to be dishonest but still have integrity?
It's called situational.
Fundamentally,
it's called situational.
Yeah, situational. Yeah, it's situational morality. Okay, or as Don Corleone said after the Undertaker left, despite what the Undertaker thinks, we're not murderers. Okay, but we do kill people. Okay,
there's a difference. There's a difference.
But we ain't murderers. But there's a difference, right? But for whatever that's worth to people, if you just want to break it down and understand how it works as a power equation, that would have been the power equation. It would have fixed all of this.
Yeah, but
and the people would be happy.
You all raise very important points, because when I look at the points that Doc made with respect to preserving Joe Biden and the points that you just made, I'm wondering if we are placing too much of our fate in the vote. This world hinges on one thing, and that's power. The power to, create comfort or pain. And the vote has limited power in doing that. And there are individuals that, and we've had leaders that stay, totally contrary to what, my point is, that, the vote really is another exercise in stratification of wealth. Because what we do is we have all these individuals that come out and they compete for our vote, and what our vote does is it places them in a position of power, but nothing ever changes in the community. We still have the same issue, and when you do an analysis of strength and power, that comes from producing something that you can go and sell. That comes from producing something that allows you to take control over something. And we're not doing that. So I'm wondering if we're conflating or once again giving away our entire what we think is power in a futile manner.
Well, I think.
Well, I go ahead, Charles.
When we have the conversation as if we have some other choice. And
right,
we are limited. We are limited in terms of what we can do, how we can, and the manner in which we can act, and all of that. Because we have bought in to this thing. We, black folks in the United States are literally on an island. We don't have any international allies. So you know, we can't say, I ain't gonna do this, or I'm gonna do that. We can't say what we won't do and what we will do, because this place can shut it down. And so, like, wherever we live inside of some kind of perimeter. So in St. Louis, we live inside of 270, and in Chicago, we live inside of 294. And in Atlanta, we live inside the perimeter. They shut those things down. Nothing gets in or out, and that's a wrap. And it's that way everywhere. And so we don't have any real leverage. And so we play this game and we vote, and we should vote. But the vote only yields it doesn't yield power to the masses. I guess that's just the most simplest way to say it. And that, the best case scenario for us is, oh, he the lesser of evils. That's what kind of choice is that? That you ain't gonna get shit, but you ain't gonna get that. You know what I'm saying? And that's what this thing is. But part of it has to do with the fact that, in order for politicians to ascend, they literally have to, cut a deal with the devil. And so by the time they get to the point where, we know who they are and they have a recognizable face, they're already sold out. They're not working on our behalf. I was talking to a brother the other day, yesterday, as a matter of fact, brother from New York, and I was talking about Jeffries, and he said, "Oh yeah, he didn't just flip," but he didn't just flip.
No.
That's what he. In order for him to have the seat that he has, he cut that deal with the Jews on the front end. Otherwise, he wouldn't even be. He wouldn't be the rep. And so this was the deal on the front end. And so this is the lot that we sit in. This is the nature of it. And so we have to continue again to resist, because that's about as good as it gets for us.
So
I
yeah,
am.
go ahead, Larry.
I'm gonna be very, very brief, Mike, because I want to hear your thoughts on that. I just want to. I'm going to quote Dr. Our Morehouse brother and Charles's colleague, Dr. Amos Wilson. So we identify with the wrong thing. We need to, we identify with the experimenter, but in Pavlov's experiment, we the dog, and Skinner's experiment, we the rat. So we're the ones that are being controlled in here, and we fail to recognize that. Once again, it's a pattern recognition problem that we have. We are, I mean, and on top of that, I am, yeah, I've always avoided this group that says that, we fail to do the critical study that we need to do. But as I mean, I just don't think that I'm going to be able to remain outside of that group, because it's become more and more apparent that the opposition to our community have laid out everything that they're going to do and do, just as clearly as Jim Brown did will do on third and short. I'm getting the ball, I'm running through that hole, and everybody in this arena knows that I'm going to do it. And we fail to read the blueprint and to react to it. Mike, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, Larry, that's really perfect. because it's our lack of understanding of the ultimate reality in which we exist. As Charles was talking, and you picked up on it, uh, that that quote from Kierkegaard came to mind. Who am I? Why am I here? Here, who's in charge? Why was I not consulted? I need to speak to the director. Okay, the existential question
Right.
of what the hell is going on, and did nobody consult me? Okay,
Right.
and because of our lack of larger intellectual awareness, we buy empty packages like democracy. Democracy is a process. It ain't a thing. The process does not produce a result. The result is a function of the people that are always in the process. So what is it at the beginning of the computer age? Garbage in, garbage out. Put rotten people into the democratic process, you get rotten results. Put good people damn near in any process, and you got a chance to come out with good results because they was good people going in. Winston Churchill had two great quotes on democracy. The first one everybody knows, and that is democracy is the worst form of government known to man, except for all the others. But the second one is just as true and almost never quoted. He said, the best reason to oppose democracy is a 5-minute conversation with any person. Okay. And
Mike, you broke up. Mike, you broke up. Could you repeat that?
Okay.
Is
Now
5.
I said Churchill had had the two quotes. One, but democracy is the worst form of government except for all others. And the second one is the major reason to oppose democracy is if you have a 5-minute conversation with the average voter to understand that you putting the welfare of humanity in the hands of the average people. And the most interesting part about it, there's not a major thinker in the Western intellectual canon, starting with Plato, that is an advocate for democracy. And all of them's problem is the fundamental ignorance of the average person. And that is this kind of absurd to trust that much to that many people who ain't got a clue. And so democracy can become just like the carnival. People wander around the carnival being entertained and think they got a chance to win prizes and stuff at the games. And anybody that knows anything about a carnival knows every game is fixed. Even the people you see walking around with prizes ain't people that won them, maybe a couple folks, but they're people that work for the carnival. They make you think that you got a chance to win. You can't win at the carnival unless the carnival wants you to win. It's like Las Vegas. The odds always favor the house. They let you win, so the rest of the people that they beaten keep coming back because so they think they got a chance. It's like somebody wins the lottery, so everybody else will keep playing and losing. Now that's a hustler's mentality. And if you got a bourgeois middle class upbringing, you believe this bullshit that they tell you about rules and fairness. Ain't nothing fair. You have what you can take, you keep what you can hold.
Petty bourgeois upbringing.
Petty bourgeois, yeah, because the real bourgeois don't believe that shit, right?
Right. So yeah, that is 100% right. And once again, if you identify with the rat, you would know that part of it. The rat's got 3 choices for the most part: pain, reward, or absent, or taking the pain away. But all of them, even the one that's getting rewarded, is still part of the process. And you would understand that you know, if you were a part of the petty bourgeois, that you're a safety valve individual, and that you're fortunate for being who
Right.
you know, where you were. So we've got we've got some very definite problems, because we do believe that folks just need to pick themselves up by their bootstraps, and
Well,
the government has no play in that, and that is foolish.
Larry, part of every con is to keep you con. Okay, if you figure out you've been cheated and con, then that ain't a con. That ain't a sting. I robbed you. Okay, but when I con you, you give me what I came for, and grateful that I took it. That's the ultimate hustle.
Right, right.
And you got to know that everybody's playing, and uh, you know, you guys heard me say this before, but my father, you know, it became my way of looking at politics and business. My father said, if you're gonna want to gamble, the first thing you have to do is learn how to cheat. And the reason you have to know how to cheat is not so you can cheat people, so you'll know when people are cheating you. Because in every game, somebody's cheating. There
Right.
are no straight games.
Right.
So the object is not to make the game straight. It's just to beat the cheat. Okay. And the way you beat the cheat is once you figure out how somebody cheats, you play them because you know where they're going to be. So you have to out cheat the cheater.
And
And
if you
go
think
ahead.
that's wrong, go to one of these casinos and win a couple of days,
Too much money. Right.
and watch the letter that you receive,
Right.
your banning that subsequently occurs.
And you know, and so here, this is another one of these spaces that we struggle in. It gets to pattern recognition, it gets to reality testing. It's like the United States overthrows governments. that's that's just fundamental. The reason that there is a United States is because they overthrew a government.
Right.
And so that's ground zero. So Britain was the world power. They sent some folks over here to do what they did, and then the folks that they sent was a bunch of criminals, and then those criminals united and then overthrew the world power, and then has been the world power since, right? And in so doing, not they after overthrowing Britain, they just continue to overthrow governments, kind of predicated on whatever they perceive to be United States interests. That's this thing that we live in. If you can overthrow a government, you can overthrow any community. The Black community looks ratchet because the United States infiltrates communities. People watch. What was the last thing that my man Singleton did? Snowfall. People watch Snowfall, think this is all just in the mind of John Singleton. That was a narrative about the about how why we got cocaine running crack, cocaine and crack. That's Oliver North. That was a real thing. Folks think it's entertainment. That was a real thing, and again, I have no, that guy that Denzel portrayed. I have no reason to believe that that was anything different. I think that was the first one. I don't think, Freeway Ricky Ross was. I mean, he was in the streets for real, and he was selling all of that. But I don't think that was the first iteration. I think the first iteration was whatever that guy did in New York. The government was selling heroin in the 50s and the 60s, and then they were selling crack in the 80s. This is what the United States government does. And so we have to figure out ways that, that we can be. We got to figure out ways that we can survive. But we miss, we don't study game. We don't study game tape. we don't do film study. We don't know. We don't study the playbook. We don't do none of that. We just keep going out talking to some guys yesterday, and guy told me yesterday while we was watching the game, he's like, "Well, I knew this stuff was. I knew the NBA was rigged when in game 3, such and such tried to get a foul, and they ain't." I was like, "Brother, will you stop?" They kill people. If they overthrow governments. Why are we keep having this conversation? You got people sitting up thinking that they smart, telling you that sports leagues is rigged. They kill people. You ain't smart because you know that the NBA is fixed. that's the least of your problems. But that's how we think. We think we own game. We think we own game. But we're not on game. We're getting played. And that's the nature of this thing. We just got to figure out how to survive. That is it. That is it. Talk to some other brothers. I've been telling my kids, this place ain't for us. We got to go. We're gonna live abroad. Okay, so where are you gonna go? Where you going? Where are you going? What you gonna do when you get there? Right? And even if you can go, that's fine. But if you call yourself the nationalist that you say you are, you just gonna leave all these other people that can't go? Right? And so this is, this is the nature of the thing. And it's not no new thing. This is what we was trying to figure out. Frederick Douglass was having conversations with all of them brothers back then. Brothers was like, we gonna go to Canada, we gonna go to Africa. Frederick was like, how we just gonna lead the people? It's the same thing now. And it's like, this is the nature of our existence. We have to resist, and we got to be prideful in our resistance, because this is the nature of our fight. This is the battle.
Charles, as I have gotten older, I first read it when I was in college, and it was an interesting story, and I kind of understood it. No, I knew what it was, what he was talking about, but I didn't really understand it. And the older I have gotten, so now at 75, I know what Camus is talking about in the myth of Sisyphus.
Wait a minute, you're only 2 years younger than Biden. How come you're not shuffling? I'm sorry.
Wait a minute. That yeah, I shuffle. That's why I know he's too old. Okay?
No. You're very adroit. But I'm sorry. Go ahead. I had to.
No, but wait a minute. I can give you a great game. I can't give you a great season. That's what I'm talking about. So you can run out any old guy who is a player, and he can get you for it. But don't ask him to do it the next night. Don't ask him to carry you through the playoffs. He can't do that. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for that dude. And when you're 77, 81, 75, you ain't that dude no more. Okay. Now, you can talk to somebody about what it means to be that dude. What you got to do when you're thinking about it, this is what it's going to be like. All this shit that you don't know because you ain't never been there. So let me tell you what you're going to see. You're still going to, I'm telling you, and you still don't know it, but at least you won't be surprised. That's why we practice, so that you ain't surprised by shit in the game. And you say, oh, okay, I know what that is because we worked on that in practice. So I know what I think I'm going to do. So that's why young guys should talk to old guys. And the old guys shouldn't be telling them this is the way. No, I don't know how you're going to do it because I ain't going to be there when you have to deal with it. But I can tell you this is how the shit's coming. This is what it'll kind of look like. And you'll have to figure out what to do in that moment. But we are like Sisyphus in that this epic struggle of Black people is pushing that boulder up the hill, and it's going to keep rolling down. And Camus basically says the relationship between man and the universe, or people and the universe, is absurd. We ain't got nothing but questions, and the universe don't give no answers. That shit don't make sense. But that's, so you're going to have to figure it out for yourself. And that's what the struggle is. And what you and Charles are referencing is how you struggle with that existential reality. Now, part of the reason religion is rational in the epic sense of it, not individual deliverance, is because for a species that needs answers about the universe, and the universe appears to be orderly, because the sun comes up every day in the east, sets in the west, seasons come and go. So it's rational to believe that it is some order. And you want to know what that order is. So anybody that can give you an explanation that makes the shit make sense, you'll go for. And the less educated you are, the more simple-minded the explanation can be. And that's how we get to totems and all sorts of shit. And the more thoughtful you are, the more you struggle with a specific answer for an empirically unknown question. The answer is empirically unknown. And the question is, how do you make peace with that? And you usually make peace with it through some religious or philosophical predisposition. But at a certain level, you don't say, I know. You say, I choose to believe. Okay. Because what I choose to believe ain't knowable. Okay. What you're choosing to believe is not knowable. But as rational beings, we accept that. Why? Because I need some kind of answer. And even Camus in the myth of Sisyphus is trying to provide an answer for a universe that don't give answers for people who have to have some order and rationality in their lives. Now, if we were lions and tigers and monkeys and shit, we wouldn't be bothered with that. We'd be operating on instinct and all that kind of shit, and the world make all the sense in the world to them, okay? Because they know what they got to do in it. Our problem is, or our issue is, it ain't a problem, is we get to think about that. And when you think about that shit, basically, it ain't no real answers. So you try to reason, you try to pick a belief system that has a rational basis for how you think you either understand the world or choose to understand the world. And our problem is our narrative for us in America is a white narrative that's been given to us. If you look at all the brothers and sisters that we admire and hold up, they created their own black narrative, for whether it's Delaney or Douglas, Du Bois, Malcolm, even Dr. King, who borrows liberally from the Western canon, but it's his narrative, it's his black narrative. And our confusion now is here's what I told somebody, because I don't think I've ever said this to you guys, that God or the universe, however you choose to believe it, gives you the answers before you know what the question is. I think I choose to believe that, not that you meditate or pray for an answer and the answer appears. No, you meditating to discover what's already there. And James Weldon Johnson gave us the answer to our dilemma 100 years ago. And it's in the third verse of Lift Every Voice and Sing, that we sing all the time and ain't paid attention to the words in 100 years. And Larry, this is particularly, I'm mindful of you because this is the kind of brother you are. But what does he tell us? Lest our path stray from the path our God, where we met thee, lest our heart romp with the wind of the world, we forget thee. Literally, that's why we're here right now.
That's why we're here.
That's why we're here. Okay? And we've had that answer for 100 years.
Wow.
But we don't know the question.
And the other thing is, Mike, we only sing the first verse.
Yeah.
Right.
We don't even know the song.
Yeah.
So what do you think of that, Larry?
I think once again, I think you answered the question in answering and asking the question. You stated that the universe in my opinion, God gives you the answer before you get the question. You already got the answer. And the answer is that's the truth. I mean, that's the reason we're here in this mess in the first place. Right. And now we have replaced what and I think we do, because what you said was you have a belief and not a knowing. But you just said we do have a knowing. You just said we got a knowing, or ways of knowing that goes beyond that. And I agree with that. We have a ways of knowing that have uncomfortably
that we've betrayed.
We've betrayed. We've replaced it with another idol. And a whole nother value system that doesn't even fit us. Now, I'll listen to Yacht Rock Radio because they are on the one beat, and it keeps me and it keeps me more alert. But the two beat is what I feel. I know that is where I came. The downbeat, I know that came over here with me. I know that. And, Yacht Rock Radio wants to emulate that, but not enough to soothe me into the comfort that the downbeat does. Because there's a way of knowing that my entire spiritual and biorhythms are harmonized with. But having said that, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about Juneteenth, a subject that Doc raised in the pre-production.
And I think Juneteenth matters in this conversation because it speaks to our confusion. Black folks believe that Juneteenth marks the official end of slavery. We believe that, and that's wrong. These are knowable things. These are knowable things, right? And so, first of all, to even get caught up in this Juneteenth piece, you got to believe that the Emancipation Proclamation freed slaves, and it didn't. So you start off dumb. So it's like you can't get nowhere with this. And so you start off thinking that Lincoln freed the enslaved. Lincoln didn't free the enslaved. That's ground zero. And so then you get to June 19th, 1865, and then you got folks saying, you know, the the enslaved didn't know they were free. That don't even make sense. How would they know? So it wasn't that they didn't know. It was that it was slavery. So you thought that the white folks in Texas was gonna say, you know what, y'all free.
Go and get
I mean,
go and get it.
It's foolishness. It's foolishness. You know, and so I didn't need no national holiday. You know, so this is the most recent national holiday. The national holiday before this was Dr. King, and nothing changed when we started recognizing Dr. King nationally. Nothing changed. It been the same thing. Not gonna change that we got Juneteenth. Ain't nothing changing. You know, now you do have Black folks saying don't talk bad about Joe Biden because we got Juneteenth. But nothing changes because of Juneteenth. And more importantly, nothing changes in terms of our psyche because we still don't study. We still don't read. We still believe that Juneteenth was, freedom. Joe Biden's state, Joe Biden's from Delaware. It was still people enslaved in Delaware after Juneteenth. Facts. There was still people enslaved in Kentucky after Juneteenth. Facts. Those native, those Indians, or however we call them, Native American, First World people, what do we call them, people that got displaced from the southeastern United States, what we know to be the southeastern United States. Once they got done with the Trail of Tears, them jokers had slaves. And they had slaves until 1866. And so after the United States abolished slavery, the United States then set up whatever their truce was with the Creek Nation, to abolish slavery. So the last African slaves were held by the Creek Nation in Oklahoma. That was July of '66.
Hey,
and so ain't nobody celebrating that.
Charles, let me also, for me, put the end of slavery in context. England abolished slavery in the 1830s. United States, let's call it the 1860s, no particular date, but the 1860s. Here's what I would suggest to people to consider. England, matter of fact, a lot of Western Europe, but England led in this case of abolishing the slave trade and slavery, because 1830s marks the beginning of the first industrial revolution. slavery is part of a feudal agrarian system that's totally incompatible with industrial capitalism. Feudalism is a caste system that requires in-place labor to support it. Capitalism is a class system that has to exploit labor by moving it around, and the notion of maintaining it and keeping it in place to support a caste, nobility or white folks, whatever, is inconsistent with the dynamic of capitalism. The United States didn't enter the Industrial Revolution until post-Civil War. And the reality is the Civil War is really generated by, is America going to enter the industrial age? So remember, nobody was opposed to slavery in the southern states. They were opposed to the expansion of slavery because the expansion of slavery mitigated against the advancement of early stage capitalism. Okay? And so slavery, a slave system, is just inconsistent with capitalism. Now, it ain't like capitalism don't exploit labor too. It just don't need slaves to exploit labor. You do it another way. So this had nothing. These are not moral questions. These are questions.
It's all business.
Economic hegemony. So yeah, it's just business. Okay, and Lincoln's position was he was prepared to keep slavery.
He was fine with slavery. He was against the expansion of slavery.
He was against the expansion of slavery. So, and why was he against the expansion of slavery? Because Lincoln was part of that emerging modern class system that was coming to take root in America, that was taking root in America, that had already taken root in Europe. So America couldn't have been, and once you read a little bit about the people, the men of the Confederacy, they wanted a slave empire. They actually were trying to figure out how to get back to the Middle Ages, where you could have a nobility class that was supported by serfs and peasants that were tied to the land. That's all.
Cornerstone speech. I said that was stated in the Cornerstone speech.
Right. So, but if you're not aware of the development, particularly of European history and the emergence of the industrial age versus the Middle Ages, you don't have a place to put slavery, and you don't have a place to understand what was going on in America in the 1840s, 1850s. And that was, America was trying to figure out how to join England and the rest of, quote, Western Europe in what was this industrial age that was emerging that England was leading. And America got rid of slavery in time to be totally free when the second industrial revolution started in the 1870s. And you could argue that America really took off in the 1870s, 1880s, because it was no longer shackled with slavery from an economic standpoint. And they just worked out the white supremacy shit another way. But basically, my view is that racism is the handmaiden to capitalism. that capitalism uses whatever is available to support it and grow it. And at one point, racism, white supremacy has a rationale that they can use. In other parts, it doesn't. And when it doesn't, they don't have any problem getting rid of. I mean, basically, now they didn't change the economic structure of South Africa, but they didn't have no problem kicking white South Africans to the curb and say, let Mandela out of jail. They go be in charge, and they go be in charge because messing around with you white folks is 10% of the population. We'll lose all this shit. We'll let them superficially run the stuff, and the internal structure, the infrastructure of South Africa has not changed.
Has remained the same.
It is the same. So Western economic interests just move away from feudalism into industrialization that required imperialism, exaction of resources from the rest of the underdeveloped world, and then just moved into a neo-colonial international system where the elite of indigenous populations could run the country inside the context of this larger economic structure, which gets us back to the opening of the show, and that is the role of the G7.
The role of the G7.
Right. Okay. That's what I meant when I said the G7 is just the 21st century version of Western imperialism, which was a major tool of European capitalism. That basically, by its inherent nature, capitalism is like cancer. It don't stay at one place. It has to expand. So imperialism is how capitalism spread to the rest of the planet, because capitalism, like cancer, is just growth for growth's sake. Okay, the ultimate thing that cancer does, it destroys the host in which it lives, but it can't help itself. Okay, and that's what capitalism was. In a lot of ways, huh?
And so, do you think that while Negroes are eating, red velvet cake and drinking, cherry soda and eating barbecue, that they thinking about any of this?
Oh, hell no! But ain't no white folks in America thinking about it either.
Ain't nobody thinking about this. This is why we're vulnerable, right?
Wait,
because
and
historical.
The preachers, the black ministers that I've always been impressed by and will pay attention to are folks who not only went to the seminary, but they're theologians as well as pastors. And so they address the nature of religion in this larger philosophical, theological context. So they move you away. So they move you away from monkish superstition, as Thomas Jefferson called it.
Yes.
To here is a thoughtful way to think about these unknowable things. And I can give you a path to reason to this conclusion. And I always am amused when I hear people say, well, I know God is real or this is real. And when I was younger, I could get in an argument with you. But now that I'm older, I don't give a shit. But I would say, then you don't have any faith. And they don't know what you're talking about. I said, because faith is the answer to doubt. When you have certainty, you don't need faith. Okay? Something that you can know. Don't fight. The reason you have to have faith is because there's something I believe that I can't know. So what do you know in that last Indiana Jones with Sean Connery in it, what was the third one, where they were looking for the Holy Grail, and he gets to the last test, and Sean Connery is his father, and he's wounded, and he's standing at the cliff in the dark. He walks out the door, ain't nothing but this chasm, this darkness, and he can't see stuff. And he knows, Sean Connery knows that a boy is agnostic. He said, but the answer to this riddle is you got to step out on faith. You can't see what's there, but you have to believe that there's going to be something there when you step out. Can't know it. You have to believe it. And that's a function of faith. Now, most preachers, when they preach it, they tell you what they know and what you can know. And that's bullshit. I can tell you what I believe and why I choose to believe it. And if you accept it as a belief system, what I do know is what you choose to believe is as valid as what I choose to believe. Because neither one of us can empirically refute the other. So I wouldn't choose to believe it as you believe it, but I have to accept that's what works for you. So if for you, you say this is about the ancestors and somebody else says it's about the Buddha, all that shit is good at the end of the day. Because what we all struggling with is to give some meaning to human existence.
To existence.
But because the universe don't give us, didn't nobody leave a playbook. However we ended up here, however we got here, again, the Kierkegaard's question, who am I? Where is this place? What does all this mean? Why was I not consulted? I need to speak to the director. Okay, that's because that's literally that's what we're doing every time you go into a synagogue, a mosque, or a church. You say, "Can I speak to the director? Because I need some direction," and you ain't gonna never get an answer. Okay, but you can try to look deep enough inside, or get to a level of consciousness that you can infer some things that you can reason to this position, and the rest of it, I just have to choose to believe. What I heard somebody say once, he said, what any theologian and any scientist have in common is they both will regularly have to say, I don't know. Okay. But here's what I believe, but here's what the theory is.
Correct.
Okay. The theory is the theory till it ain't no more. Okay. This is what I believe until I know something better. And our problem is when people say, well, I want certainty, rather than elevate their consciousness to be comfortable with the unknown or the unknowable is really the first. We don't. We tell them some shit to go out and make them think they know what the world really is. And that's why they're subject to be tricked into all this other bullshit that gets thrown on them. And it starts, and I was just thinking of this thought came to me. When I was growing up, my father never mentioned Santa Claus. You know, they wouldn't talk. My mother, everybody else talked about Santa Claus. And then my brother and I figured it out by 8 years old. Ain't no Santa Claus. Everybody gets your presents. So, but when I was about 10 or 12, I asked, I said, Daddy, how come you never said anything about Santa Claus? And he said, son, I will never tell you something I know to be a lie. So why would I lie to you? Okay? And it was that fundamental relationship. It's kind of like, I could be wrong, but I'm never going to lie to you. And Santa Claus is a lie. Okay? Now, you might want to tell it to a 3-year-old or something like that because it just makes it easier and stuff like that. But at a certain age, I got to sit you down and start to tell you the truth of the world that you live in. And then when you ask me a question, when you're old enough to ask the question, you're also old enough to hear the answer.
And and that's a great example, because it's like, what's the point, right? So, like, why are we teaching kids to lie?
Right.
And so, but it is all in the interest of empire. We don't think it that way, but that's what it is.
Right.
And so this is the nature of things.
Because if I can get you to believe this bullshit at 8, then I can sell you some more bullshit when you're 25 or 50.
Yes. And so this is the foolishness. And so, but we continue to be vulnerable because we'd rather be told than to know.
Right.
So if you tell me whatever, then I'll ride with that. But I ain't gonna do no independent study, so I know.
And matter of fact, and we ain't comfortable with the fact that sometimes it ain't no answer.
And we're not comfortable with that. And so, yes, and so we misappropriate, other things. We misappropriate, that's the misappropriation of religion. So I don't have to know, because I know who sit on the throne.
And you can't know that.
That's the
can't know that. You can believe
the foolishness that we do.
Yeah, you can believe that, but you can't know that.
You can't know that.
And all the heroes that oppressed people look to operate on unknown assumptions every day. Nobody knows. Nobody knows what fourth quarter profits are going to be. Nobody knows what fourth quarter inventory needs are going to be. And yet and still, we idolize these individuals and operate as if they're demigods or God themselves. Go ahead, Doc. I'm sorry.
No, you own it. That's where we are. That's what it looks like.
Well, I mean that. Let me get a closing statement from both, and let's focus on, if we could, this evening or this morning. Let's focus on solutions to the issues that we talked about. We understand that we're still living in the same age and an empire that has modeled himself after the Roman Empire, and that the same game is underway. And we understand that an outgrowth of that, of course, is Juneteenth. No one on this platform this morning asked for that, but we receive that as some piddlings, and it's quite insulting. I akin it to me, and I know there are varying degrees of acceptance of this, but the whitewashing of history and the further manipulation of it is one of the most insulting things you can do. Juneteenth is one of those matters, and to me, attempting to merge the Negro League statistics and after all of the vast majority of the Negro League players are in the grave, now attempting to incorporate them when you intentionally ousted these individuals. And it's just the same play over and over again. And we have got to be wiser. What are you all's comments or, the concluding comments for today?
So
Well,
again,
go ahead, Charles.
again, we struggle to contextualize our existence, and so again, I mean, we had this conversation before. We we gotta believe that there's some huge conspiracy. It ain't no huge. It's white supremacy. Ain't no conspiracy. It's like, and so the demise of the Negro Leagues is simply that. It wasn't no. They ain't have to come up with nothing. That it just was what it was. It's white supremacy, right? That's what this thing is all day, every day. Joe Biden is a white supremacist all day, every day. Lincoln was a white supremacist all day, every day. Lincoln wasn't our guy. Joe Biden wasn't our guy, or isn't our guy. Major League Baseball ain't for us. I mean, we just come up with these things and we try to figure out why we get treated the way we get treated. It's white supremacy. That is it. Period. We overthinking this thing. Those people don't like us. Now, what we have to understand is those people don't like themselves. Because that's the other thing. White people don't like people. They are hostile, aggressive people. That's who they are. It's just easier to not like people of color because then you can make it that. But at the end of the day, them jokers don't like each other. They don't like nobody. This is history. This is history. But because we don't study, because we don't read, we don't understand the context in which we live. And so we suffer for that. And hopefully, somebody will, each week we say something that I hope that people go back and read and research for themselves so that they can act differently going forward. Because that is the purpose of level set.
Yeah. Charles, you really have like a laser focus on what level set is about. It's fundamentally 3, sometimes 4 brothers on Saturday morning struggling with contextualizing our condition and our existence, asking each other questions and talking about it. It's kind of like a philosophical inquiry. We ain't providing no concrete answers. We're raising the questions, we're exchanging things, and we're kind of having a dialogue. And that's important. It's kind of like what you just said. So we have to think about what we say to each other. We have to think during the entire time, and then when we leave, we hopefully left up to the value, and you're walking away with some of the value. And the whole purpose of doing it in this medium is people get to eavesdrop on our conversation. And it's kind of like being in the barbershop where you wasn't in the conversation, the debate, but particularly when you was younger, and you say, you know what, I heard some brothers say, and this is what they were talking about. Because in that 2 hours you was in the barbershop, they got in a conversation that resonated with you and may have said something that you had thought about, and it triggered a thought. So all we're really doing is fertilizing each other's field intellectually. And hopefully by extension, some of this falls on other folks that can use it to grow who they are. And I'll go back to my point earlier in the podcast. We can't give you answers. We're asking each other questions, and then we try to provide, here's what I believe, or here's what I'm thinking about that. And then we try to do it in a rational way. Here's the intellectual support for the argument, the historical, empirical data that allows me to reason to this point. And Plato has Socrates saying in the Republic, in his trial where he ultimately gets executed because but he said the unexamined life is not worth living. And that basically to go through your existence without questioning it, and I don't mean question it and say, well, this is bad, this is wrong. But what does this mean? Why am I here? What is this all about? And what separates us from other animals on the planet is this unique characteristic or ability that allows us to think about the existential. Because to the best of our knowledge, there are no other mammals on the planet that are engaged here. There's some that look to be as highly intelligent as us. And part of the reason we can do it is we have a unique capacity for language that humans developed maybe 100,000 years ago. And it's this capacity for language that allows us these exercises that also create these questions that don't have answers, which is why the story of Adam and Eve and the apple doesn't make literal sense, but it's a great metaphor or analogy, because I always get them confused. They say, don't eat nothing else. You can eat everything else here because everything else here keep you ignorant and happy. You eat this and you'll no longer be ignorant. And since you're no longer ignorant, you're going to be, if not unhappy, you'll be a troubled soul because you now have questions that would not have happened had you not eaten the apple. And what we're required to do, and we need to think of our children this way, and that's what rites of passages are when you move from childhood to adult. It's time for you to eat the apple. Okay, I'm the snake. This will give you the apple. Because you can't go through this existence. You can't go through this life ignorant and unaware. And once you bite the apple, you'll never be the same. And it can be troubling, but I think it's better than the alternative. And really, if you think about it, for the years now we've been doing this, and kind of why we keep doing it even in a changed format, it's because we need to talk to each other. Okay, even if ain't nobody listening, we need to talk to each other. And I think about this the same way I used to think about my columns, and that is, I'm not writing for the public, I'm writing for myself. I'm thinking out loud. And other people get a chance to hear me thinking. Hopefully, maybe they took something from it, maybe they don't. So in a lot of ways, this is a selfish act that we need, that we just share our selfishness with whoever chooses to listen. And that's why I try never to miss our Saturday. And I fundamentally am grateful for you and Larry of making sure that we're gonna be here on Saturday morning. Somebody's gonna be here on Saturday morning, and inevitably, at least one of us, if not more, will show up. You know, y'all don't have the blessing of being members of that third form Black fraternity. Y'all came with the first two, and that's all right, because somebody had to be first and second. Larry got to be first, and Charles, you got the right year. It was just early, okay? But my fraternity is, we're not known for our preparation and practice, but we do show up. And I remember being a neophyte first going over, and it was some kind of song fest, some big thing, and we was gonna do something. But we never rehearsed. Okay, we called these rehearsals, didn't nobody show up and stuff, and the thing was gonna be in a couple of days. It was the Delta thing, and I remember talking to Lincoln Scott. I said, man, ain't nobody showed up. What we gonna do? He said, Michael, don't worry about it. The frat always rises to the occasion. So I can say that about my cousins. and that's what it means to be in the frat. For all of us, you rise to the occasion, man. And that's what it meant to be raised the way we were raised as Black boys, to be Black men. And that no matter what we ain't do or what we did, we try to rise to the occasion. And these Saturday mornings is just us rising to the occasion.
Right. To the occasion.
We need to be here for somebody that we don't know. And I guess that's why we keep showing up.
It reminds me of Reuben Hurricane Carter's conversation he had with the young brother. Of course, you have to take a movie for what it's worth, but and I'm not sure how true it was. But Reuben Hurricane Carter's book wound up in a book fest in Canada that wound up sparking the group of individuals that freedom, that fought for his freedom, and that really promoted his innocence, as we all know he was. But you never know what may happen with some of the information that you put out. You put out in the public, and some people call it serendipity. I call it God's will, and you just never know. And Mike, along your point, that we do need this. I've seen an evolution in myself, as from the time we've started this, and so I mean, it's one of those things where you challenge yourself, and to be challenged by brilliant minds, and to do that, watch some of the public, all three listeners, pay attention while you're doing that, man. I mean, it's part of the evolution. It's part of the evolution, man.
Well, you know what? We like jazz musicians as opposed to entertainers.
Absolutely.
Entertainers are trying to fill up an auditorium, and they want to know what y'all want to hear, because that's what I'm going to play. That's what I'm going to sing. Jazz musicians are artists, and
That's right.
That's why they don't need arenas. They in clubs, because they show up to say, this is what we want to play.
This is what we do.
I hope somebody's here to listen to it. But even if ain't nobody here, this is what we gonna play. Because this is why we play. Because we kind of want to say this, And everybody hopes you got some kind of audience, but you ain't doing it for the audience.
No, because this
You're
is this is
doing it
not
because
this isn't prosperity gospel right here, baby. This is
right.
what you need to hear. Well, we want to thank you all for indulging us and you know,
And Larry, that's a good way to put it. Thank you for indulging us.
yeah,
Right.
yes, and hit the like button if you're tuning in on YouTube, and we will listen to your comments, and certainly is we strive to get better each and every day. I'm attorney Larry Fields signing out for Dr. Charles Alexander and the Mike Jones.
E. Mike Jones.
Thank you all.